Hey, welcome traders. Thanks for coming back and watching another video. I always want them to be as valuable to you as possible. And I want to tell you about my unique approach in this video. And it's not just to try to sell you stuff, but it's kind of like what I discovered about being in the psychology field for over 30 years and how I can break it down and teach you guys what I think works and what doesn't. So, what I do is I address the subconscious mind. Everybody else tries to appeal to your logical mind, and that just doesn't work. A lot of times, it really doesn't work. So, to address the subconscious mind, I use a combination of eye movement techniques and visualization exercises. So, these methods speak the language of the cat, which is part of my RoboCat metaphor. You can read about it or see videos about it in other videos. It helps traders to align their logical strategies with emotional responses. All right, so eye movements uniquely bypass the logical brain. The logical brain is always putting out all this noise, and you need to just get it out of the way and engage with the subconscious directly. And this is going to enable traders to recalibrate their stress response and maintain control even in high adrenaline situations. So I'd like for you to consider a trader experiencing an unexpected market drop. Typically, this triggers a surge of adrenaline and it causes the logical brain to go offline. Traditional advice might suggest taking a deep breath and sticking to the plan. Just stick to it, just do it. But that advice is rendered ineffective when the cat is in control, your emotional fight or flight brain. Through my method, traders learn to use eye movement exercises during these moments to communicate directly with the subconscious. This not only reduces immediate emotional reactions, but it also fosters lasting changes in how they respond to future stressors. So, a couple examples from my practice. I had this one client, he totally struggled with revenge trading. And of course, logically, he knew that chasing losses was so destructive. But in the moment, fear of failure and a need for validation would totally override his better judgment. After incorporating my techniques, he reported that during stressful trading sessions, he could feel his mindset shift. Eye movements helped him to acknowledge the adrenaline spike without succumbing to it. Instead of making impulsive attempts to recover losses, he was able to step back, reassess, and make decisions aligned with his strategy. Another client who was a very experienced trader came to me after years of battling with overconfidence. After a series of wins, he'd start to feel invincible and he'd take risks beyond his original plan. But using my method, he learned to recognize the surge of excitement fueled by adrenaline. And through eye movements and visualization exercises, he could engage his subconscious mind and regain balance before making decisions. So over time, this practice made his trading more consistent and disciplined. But you know what? Like, I don't know if I'm doing such a perfect job of explaining this. It's not just noticing what you're doing and then not doing it. We go into your mind, you and me, and by the way, I'm not doing anything. I'm just creating the conditions for you to do your own healing. And so we just kind of rewire stuff. And like we get it so that you don't want to overtrade. We get it so that you are able to take losses in stride. And I mean, like, you'll always know that you have the option to go off script and to go against your rules, but I want to get it so that you don't even feel like doing it. There's no homework, there's no internal struggle, there's no coaches telling you, well, just fucking figure it out because they don't have anything else to say. This helps you to really recalibrate your desires and the warning system that you have, and it's going to get you right back on track and focus. So let's talk a little bit about the science behind this. The effectiveness of eye movement techniques is supported by research in areas such as eye movement desensitization and reprocessing. You might have heard of it. It's called EMDR. There's tons of research on it, and also hypnosis. And there's a lot of evidence that says that it works, but there just isn't like a convenient, concrete explanation why. The approach has proven helpful in processing traumatic memories and recalibrating emotional responses. So while EMDR is typically associated with trauma therapy, its principles can be adapted to enhance performance and emotional regulation in high stress environments, including, of course, training. One theory suggests that moving the eyes back and forth replicates the rapid eye movement state of dreaming, which is closely tied to the subconscious mind. And you know what it's like when you wake up from a dream and then like it seems like so weird, but it's only because it was your subconscious mind expressing itself with your logical brain sort of offline letting that happen. And then when you wake up, your logical brain, which we operate within and probably over identify with, is like, oh shit, that was such a crazy dream, that doesn't make any sense at all. But really it the emotional brain has its own language and its own way of being. And by the way, it doesn't speak English. You can't just tell your emotions what to do. And that's why I call it a cat, of course, because you can't tell a cat what to do. Why? Because they're a pain in the ass. That's why. Another theory says that looking left is what's activating the right side of your brain, and then looking right activates the left. And what you're doing is you're connecting the two hemispheres of your brain, which they don't really talk that much. And then others believe that it might involve memory reconsolidation, but I argue that it extends beyond memory alone. The bottom line is that not everything can be neatly explained in logical left brain concrete terms, and that's okay. We can't fully explain meditation or dreaming or mindfulness or hypnosis either, but we know that those are exist. One time I shared the success of my method with one of my colleagues, and he was like, okay, so we know that it works in practice, but how does it work in theory? And I was trying to explain it. And then finally I was like, you know what? I don't even really give a shit at this point because the results speak for themselves. By integrating these techniques with targeted visualization exercises, traders can reprogram their subconscious responses, which fosters a more composed and strategic mindset, even when market conditions are chaotic. This method isn't just about knowing what to do, it's about being able to do it when it matters most. So back to eye movement desensitization and reprocessing, EMDR. It's the first type of therapy that used eye movements. It was pioneered in the 1980s by Francine Shapiro, and she was like apparently walking in the park, and she was really stressed out, and she started moving her eyes back and forth, and she realized like, whoa, there's something to this. And from there, there's tens of thousands of practitioners around the world who are trained in this modality. So it is the most researched trauma specific therapy to date. This development is incredibly exciting because it finally gives us a tool to interface directly with the cat, and it bypasses the logical robot brain that so many therapies just appeal to and really can't even get out of. But despite its potential, I think EMDR falls way short in how it utilizes the eye movements. The sessions really don't have focus. Clients just dive into their painful past and then they just stay there. And then they just have to keep reliving all the worst shit that ever happened to them again and again and again. And then you sprinkle in some eye movements. So sometimes they can create breakthroughs once in a while, but for me, like I did EMDR therapy as a client for 4 years, and I would get so messed up every single session that I'd have to like schedule time to go for a long walk before I could even drive because I mean, that's just insane. Like that, I wasn't getting any better. It was ripping the scab off every single session. And my therapist was great. And I mean, she was a really highly trained and she was a really good person. She was really smart and she really cared about me, but it was fucking me up. And that's what therapy does for a lot of people. So if you're with a therapist right now who just makes you relive again and again all the worst stuff that you ever been through, you might want to think about doing something else. Just saying. So for 140 years, starting with Sigmund Freud, the core assumption in therapy was that if you talk about your pain, you're releasing it. And sure, that is true once in a while. If you hold like a deeply held secret, it can be cathartic to let it go and to tell somebody who witnesses you and doesn't tell you it's all in your head, or you should just snap out of it, or happiness is a choice. You can tell I got a little chip on my shoulder. This concept, however, of talking about it means releasing it is way overgeneralized. Freud's clients were primarily high society women who were labeled as hysterical, and they often experienced a form of release when they finally were able to talk about it. A lot of them had been sexually assaulted or abused, and they couldn't talk about it with anybody. And by the way, apparently, Freud was a member of high society, and he didn't want a lot of his friends and family to be incriminated. So he kind of got away from sexual abuse and and trauma, and then he moved into more like general areas of psychology. But of course, a lot of his theories are very sexualized, and like about Freud. So, but that's enough about that. Let's talk about trading psychology specifically. Mark Douglas, the father of trading psychology, he emphasized that all trading mindset issues begin and end with fear. But knowing that fear is the problem doesn't solve it. The typical response is to try and force the mind to stay calm, to push through it with willpower. But willpower is an exhaustible resource, and it doesn't mean you're weak if you can't totally control your emotions. And what happens when you can't? Traders end up trying harder, and then they try harder, and then they blame themselves when they can't actually really control what they're feeling and doing and acting. So my eye movement techniques, just download it into your brain. You really do have to try it in order to appreciate it. You could do a free session on my website, and I would love for you guys to just give it a try. Or if you join my free Discord, there's ways to try it then. And then, of course, I'm going to be doing like regular coaching calls with people for free, and you can just get to know me and all that stuff. I'd love for you to stop on by. I had a client who had trouble trusting their intuition after they made a big, huge mistake and lost a lot of money. So they were gun shy. But what we were able to do is to process that as if it were like a psychological trauma, which it was. And I kind of had them pretend that something else happened. When you do that with eye movements, you're rewiring the conditioning, the emotional response that happens automatically. And they were able to calm their mind and reduce the emotional noise and rebuild trust in their decision making process. So that shift allowed them to act confidently without the interference of past mistakes looming over every single trade. My approach is very open ended and it's client focused, and it allows individuals to develop personal metaphors and insights that resonate with them. One client who struggled with driving after a severe accident found peace by visualizing herself kayaking, which she associated with tranquility. And this is while she was moving her eyes, and she started referring to her car as her car yak. I love this. I love when people come up with their own stuff, and it really resonated with her deeply. So I love helping people to heal themselves. Let's talk a little bit before we end about what eye movement therapy can and can't do. So, this therapy is awesome for reducing fear, enhancing creativity, supporting your intuition. It helps traders stay grounded, recognize patterns, and act on hunches without emotional interference. But it's not a super cure all. I found that like treating addiction can be challenging because it involves the brain's pleasure seeking system, and that's difficult to override. And I mean, like, when you think about it, the difference between trading and gambling, well, there's more skill involved with trading usually. I mean, with gambling, you're playing poker and there's skill involved in that. I think the main huge difference is that with gambling, you're trying to change your emotional state. You're trying to get that hit of dopamine and adrenaline. You're trying to feel good. And with trading, you're trying to make money. So if you feel good, it's a byproduct of you doing the right things. And then over time, the market rewarding you. And it's not about feeling good. When everybody goes off track is when they're like, well, I had all these losses. I really want to feel good. And then they try too hard and then they get fucked. Excuse my language. Um, so it's like the eye movement's not so great for treating depression, and it often well, whatever. That doesn't really affect you. People who are super intellectual or they have a history of extensive therapy might struggle with this, because what happens is they stay in their robot brain and they resist accessing their emotions. People who like compartmentalize so much, like law enforcement or first responders or veterans, like sometimes they don't do too well. A lot of them do, but if they're like so guarded emotionally, if they're like numb, like they have all this emotional pain and then they just spend so much mental energy to hold it down, and then it comes to the point where they're deadening their pain but they're also deadening their joy. Those people don't necessarily do all that well with the eye movement stuff. Of course, if anybody ever tries any of my stuff and it doesn't work, they can always get their money back. So for people who are open to the process, the eye movement therapy can be hugely transformative, and it works so fast. Sometimes people will buy a coaching package from me which includes multiple sessions. They only need one. And then what we do is we just save them for later, for when, things start to go off track again, if they do. But I mean, I've been able to cure people who were sexually assaulted or molested or whatever in just one session. I mean, that's unheard of, but it works so well. And I have refined the process so well that I get consistent results very reliably. But if you want to try this as a trainer, I'd love for you to do that. Just go to my website, watch the sample session. I think on this YouTube page there is one as well, and see how you feel when you're moving your eyes. And then once you add in the the focus and the direction of the suggestions when it comes to the eye movements, when we're focusing on your problems, that's much more powerful. And then if you want to use my AI coach, Max Discipline, well, Max is just super convenient and he's much cheaper than I am. And he's really almost as good. Like, it's incredible. Thank you for watching and happy trading.